So normally, at the beginning, I normally read you the chapter, but today, if I read through the chapter, then it'll spoil the ending. So I'm not going to read through the chapter today. So we'll just read through it, because it's a narrative, and narratives, they're written and not to be read and then go back to the beginning and then study it. It's meant to be studied as you read through it, because there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's not like the Psalms where you're supposed to memorize it and meditate upon it and live it out in your life. A narrative, it's a story, and the book of Judges is a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and these themes that come out, and so Judges chapter 11, it has a definite beginning, it has a definite middle, and then it has a surprising end. And if we read through it right at the beginning, then it'll spoil the ending for us. So we're gonna read through it like a story, a narrative of the Bible would be read. Last week we learned about this guy by the name of Jephthah, and his name means to open, and he's from the city of Gilead, which was one of the descendants of Manasseh. Manasseh was the son of, does anybody remember? One of the tribes, Joseph, right? And so Joseph had 2 tribes named after him. All the other brothers, the other 12 or the 11 brothers, all had only one tribe, and it was named after them. So the tribe of Reuben was named after Reuben, okay? The tribe of Benjamin was named after Benjamin, of course. They each had their own tribal name named after them. But Joseph was different. Whenever you read any of the genealogical accounts of the nation of Israel, a listing of the tribes of Israel, you will never see the name what? Joseph, right? Even though he was the most popular son, even though he was the one that got the double blessing, there's no, list that say, the tribe of Joseph, Why? Because he got 2 tribes from his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And so you always see in the list of the names of the tribes of Israel, Manasseh and Ephraim, because Joseph got a double blessing. He got this 2 tribes named after him. And we're going to be talking about those 2 tribes today. Manasseh, or Gilead, which is the son of Manasseh, which is where Jephthah is from, and their cousins, the tribe of Ephraim. So it starts out in chapter 11, verse 1. And we kind of started this last week, so you kind of know a little bit what was going on. Now Jephthah, the Gileadite, was a valiant warrior, but he was the son of a harlot. And Gilead was the father of Jephthah. And Gilead's wife bore him sons, and when his wife's sons grew up, they drove Jephthah out and said to him, "You shall not have an inheritance in your father's house, for you are the son of another woman." So Jephthah fled from his brothers and lived in the land of Tob, and worthless fellows gathered themselves about Jephthah, and they went out with him. So this Jephthah, he doesn't have a good beginning. I mean, from birth. He's an outcast. He's an illegitimate son. He was probably the firstborn son from a harlot, and once his brothers found out after they grew up and got into their teenage years and 20 years, what happened? They understood that he was illegitimate, so they kick him out. And Jephthah lives on the outskirts of town, and even though he was a valiant warrior, he has no reputation whatsoever. Verse 4, and it came about after a while that the sons of Ammon fought against Israel. And it happened when the sons of Ammon fought against Israel that the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. So, of course, they're going to find the biggest, the toughest guy that they know, and it just happens to be the outcast, the son of this Gilead, an illegitimate son. And they said to Jephthah, verse 6, "Come and be our chief, that we may fight against the sons of Ammon." Then Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, "Did you not hate me and drive me from my father's house? So why have you come to me now when you are in trouble?" And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "For this reason we have now returned to you, that you may go with us and fight with the sons of Ammon and become head over all the inhabitants of Gilead." So Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, "If you take me back to fight against the sons of Ammon, and the Lord gives them up to me, will I become your head?" And the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, "The Lord is witness between us. Surely we will do as you have said." Then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and chief over them. And Jephthah spoke all these words before the Lord at Mizpah. And so we find out that there's a relationship between Jephthah and God, and he realizes that God is in control. And you see this constant cycle throughout the judges of God raising up judges. None of them were perfect. Not a single one of the judges were perfect. Not a single person in the Bible was perfect. Even you think of these great men who get whole books named after them, or whole sections of the Bible are about them, and we find out that they're not perfect. And neither was Jephthah. Jephthah and any of the other characters in the Bible were perfect people, but they were used by God. God can't call a single perfect person to serve him. Why? Because none of us are perfect, but God uses our talents. God uses our abilities. And Jephthah, he was a valiant warrior. He was a brave warrior. He was a warrior who wasn't afraid to fight. And this nation of Ammon, they had been in the land of Israel for a long time. They were one of the nations that was not kicked out during the time of Joshua. This is approximately 250, 300 years after the time of Moses. So this would be like the nation of America after, say, the Pilgrims or something like that, And if you remember the video that I showed, and just that degradation that happens after a foundation that is firmly planted upon the Word of God, and then there's this decline. And the same thing happened in the book of Judges, over and over and over again. God would raise up and then there were women too, but God would raise up a person, and that person would bring the people of Israel back to God. And then what would happen after that person died? Over and 12 different times we find this happening in the book of Judges. What happens? The people fall back into idolatry over and over again. Verse 12. Now Jephthah sent messengers to the king of the sons of Ammon, saying, "What is between you and me, that you have come to me to fight against my land?" Not only is Jephthah a valiant warrior, a brave warrior, but he's a smart warrior. He's going to reason with the enemy. He's going to put on the very first apologetics class, basically. He's going to use logic in this story. He's reasoning with the Ammonites, going back and forth, talking to them, negotiating with them, trying to diffuse the situation before it turns into bloodshed. It's going to turn into bloodshed, but at least he starts out with this negotiation tactics. Verse 13, "And the king of the sons of Ammon said to the messengers of Jephthah, because Israel took away my land when they came up from Egypt, from Arnon as far as Jabbok, and the Jordan, therefore return them peaceably now." This was 300 years ago. These things happened 300 years ago. The Ammonites have this excuse. They're saying, "You took the land from us when you came out of Egypt." That was during the time of Moses, when they came up out of Egypt, right? That was 300 years ago. Okay. People have long memories about land, and you probably know that very well yourselves. But Jephthah sent messengers again to the king of the sons of Ammon, and they said to him, Thus says Jephthah, Israel did not take away the land of Moab, nor the land of the sons of Ammon. For when they came up from Egypt, and Israel went through the wilderness to the Red Sea, came to Kadesh, then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, Please let us pass through your land. This is Exodus. This is the book of Exodus. This is a history lesson in what happened during the time when Israel left Egypt. Not only was Jephthah a valiant warrior and a negotiator, he knew the history of Israel. It wasn't forgotten. He knew that God was the one that brought them out of Egypt into the promised land. So in verse 17, then Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, and Edom was one of the first nations they come into when you're reading the book of Exodus. And Edom was from the descendant of Esau, who was the brother of Jacob. So these were like cousins to the Israelites, and so that kind of comes into play here also. Saying, Please let us pass through your land. And the king of Edom would not listen. Okay, so the Edomites wouldn't let the people of Israel go through their land during this Exodus, in the book of Exodus, and you can read all this in Exodus, and Israel was not allowed to attack Edom because they were cousins, they were relatives, so they had to go around the nation of Edom and the land of Moab, and came to the east side of the land of Moab, and they camped beyond the Arnon, and they did not enter the territory of Moab, for the Arnon was the border of Moab. So, and Moab was also a cousin of the nation of Israel. This was one of the sons/grandsons of Lot, who got his daughters, remember, got him drunk, and then they had 2 kids by him, and so this is the descendants. And Lot was the nephew of who? Abraham, right? Who was the father of Isaac and Jacob and Esau. And so you have all these cousins, all these relatives that you're coming into the land of from the nation of Egypt. The Israelites are coming in, and God's saying, don't attack the Edomites. They're your cousins. You have to go around them. Okay, and they come up to this border of the nation of Moab, and they're not allowed to attack them. They're not allowed to go into their land. And so let's see what happens next. And so you see the progression of the events, and this is what makes a good narrative. There's suspense, right? You want to know what happens next. You want to see what's going to happen next, and you're on the edge of your seat, like what Leo's doing. You know, you're right there. You want to find out what's going to happen next, right? You know, and that's a good thing about a narrative. It keeps you on the and there's so many different writing styles in the Bible. It's not just all Psalms. It's not just all poems. It's not just all, historical genealogies. There's different types of writing styles in the Bible, and the book of Judges is an amazing narrative, and we get to see it, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat and what's going to happen next. Verse 18, or verse 19. And Israel sent messengers to the king of Sihon, king of the Amorites, the king of Heshbon, and Israel said to him, Please let us pass through your land to our place. So this is Jephthah recalling what happened 300 years ago. The nation of Israel coming out of Egypt, not forcefully going into, these countries and destroying them firsthand unless God told them to. Know what happened. They're asking, please let us go through your land. We're not going to take a single thing from you. We're even going to pay for our food and our water, as Exodus, if you read Exodus, says that they did. And it's not this, nation with, heavy armaments coming out of the nation of Egypt, going into a foreign country and destroying them. No, they didn't even have a single weapon amongst them. They were slaves coming out of the nation of Egypt. So Jephthah, he's recalling all these things to the nation of Ammon. Verse 20, but Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his country. So Sihon gathered all his people and camped on Jahaz and fought with Israel. And the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they defeated them. So Israel possessed all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of that country. So they possessed all the territory of the Amorites, from the Arnon as far as Jabbok, and from the wilderness as far as the Jordan. Since now the Lord, the God of Israel, drove out the Amorites from before his people Israel, are you then to possess it? And so what Jephthah is saying is, our God gave us this land. That is our birthright. Our God gave us this land. And he's going to make an argument in the following verses to support this logically, so that the people that these Ammonites would understand it for themselves. Since now, verse 24, do you not possess what Chemosh, your God, gives you to possess? So he's basically saying, if your God gives you something, which, he's using logic here. It's not something theological in any sense, but logically, if your God were to give you something, wouldn't you be allowed to possess it? He's logically reasoning with these pagan people who have other gods that they believe in. And this god Chemosh, whom they worshipped, was a false god. And yet he's still using logic to bring about his arguments. Since now the Lord, the God of Israel, drove out the Amorites from before his people Israel, are you then to possess it? Do you not possess what Chemosh, your God, gives you to possess? So whatever the Lord our God has driven out before us, we will possess it. And now are you now any better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive with Israel? Or did he ever fight against them while Israel lived in Heshbon and its villages, and the Aurora and its villages, and all the cities that are on the banks of the Arnon? 300 years. Why did you not recover them within that time? You've had 300 years to come and ask or try and get your land back. Why are you doing it now? It's just because they had the bigger army. They were the bigger, the bully on the street, and they wanted that land. And the Ammonites, they thought they could take it from the Israelites at this time. It wasn't because of logic or birthright or territorial rights. It was just because they thought they could take it at this time. Verse 27, I therefore have not sinned against you, but you are doing me wrong by making war against me. May the Lord, the judge, and there's a capital J right there, right? What is the name of this book? Judges. God is the ultimate judge. Judge today between the sons of Israel and the sons of Ammon. So he uses this logical argument saying, you have no right to take this land from us. We've had this land for 300 years. Why are you trying to take it now? If you want to take it through negotiations just because you think that you own this land 300 years ago, there's no way you're going to be able to get the land that way. There has to be a battle. There has to be a fight. And so what happens? Verse 29, now the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, so that he passed through Gilead and Manasseh, and this is the tribe that he's from, is Manasseh, and Gilead was one of the sons of Manasseh, which was the big capital city of Manasseh. Then he passed through Mizpah of Gilead, and from Mizpah of Gilead he went on to the sons of Ammon. And Jephthah made a vow to the Lord and said, if thou wilt indeed give the sons of Ammon into my hand, Then it shall be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the sons of Ammon, it shall be the Lord's, and I will offer it up as a burnt offering. It's this vow that he makes, and it's a vow that, you know, it sounds sincere. Whatever comes out, the very first thing that comes out of the door of my house, that's what I'm gonna sacrifice to God. I'm gonna give it as a burnt offering to God. And we make these vows sometimes too, right? You know, we call them, you know, wartime vows. We call them what's the name of the foxhole vows, right? What are those? What are the holes that they used to dig during World War I?
Foxhole?
Yeah, foxhole vows. Yeah, is that what they? See, I was right. Yeah, and it's a vow that you make rashly. It's a vow that is not thought through. And Jephthah makes this type of a vow. Whatever comes out of my house, I'm going to give it as a burnt offering. You see the suspense that's building up. You see that, and this is the amazing thing about a narrative. There's a progression of events. Verse 32. So Jephthah crossed over to the sons of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord gave them into his hands. I mean, there's one sentence on the battle. That's it. And there's no, you know, in depth. All the rest of the narrative is about Jephthah talking through to the Ammonites the events that are happening around this battle. The battle only gets, you know, these two verses here, verse 32 and 33. And he struck them with a great slaughter from Aroer to the entrance of Minnith, 20 cities, and as far as Abel Keramim. So the sons of Ammon were subdued before the sons of Israel. Verse 34. When Jephthah came to his house at Mizpah, behold, his daughter came out to meet him, with tambourines and with dancing. Now she was his own one and only child. Besides her, he had neither son nor daughter. So, I mean, you know this. You see this when you come home, hopefully. You know, it's your greatest joy to see your children run out that door and greet you, right? You know, why are they doing that? They're glad to see their dad. You know, they want to see their dad. If your family is healthy and you see these kids, they run out of the house and they say, "Daddy, Daddy, you're home. It's so good to see you," right? And Jephthah's only daughter, she greets him, you know, congratulating him on this great victory that he had with tambourines and dancing and celebrating his victory. What did he just vow? Verse 35. Oh, sorry, verse 34. Oh, we read verse 34. Verse 35. And it came about when he saw her that he tore his clothes and said, "Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low, and you are among those who trouble me. For I have given my word to the Lord, and I cannot take it back." So she said to him, "My father, you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me as you have said, since the Lord has avenged you of your enemies, the sons of Ammon." And she said to her father, "Let this thing be done for me. Let me alone 2 months, that I may go to the mountains and weep because of my virginity, and I and my companions." Then he said, "Go." So he sent her away for 2 months, and she left with her companions and wept on the mountains because of her virginity. And then Pastor brought this out, I think 2 weeks ago on Sunday, this idea of singleness being synonymous with virginity, you know, and being single, it should be should be synonymous with virginity. And this daughter who had never married, never known a man, and she's told by her dad that he's made a vow that he cannot break, that I have to sacrifice the very first thing that comes out of my house. And she asks her dad, let me go away with my friends and just be alone for like 2 months. Verse 39 and 40, and it came about at the end of the 2 months that she returned to her father, who did to her according to the vow which he had made. And so we see this example. Now there's several interpretations of this. I mean, did he really sacrifice her on an altar and as a burnt offering, or was there this a sacrifice of her, virginity in terms of, she had to remain single for the rest of her life. And if you just take it at face value, he literally sacrificed her. And that's exactly what it says in the Hebrew and exactly what it says here in the English. He did with her according to the vow which he had made. And what was the vow that he had made? To sacrifice her as a burnt offering. This is a foolish vow. What happens when we make foolish vows to the Lord? Does God make us follow them out? No. It's us that makes ourselves follow them out. Unfortunately, it's our pride. And that's what it is. And is there grace in God's eyes? Is there grace in God's eyes that when we make a vow that I'll give you $1 million, Lord, if you just help me through this time, or I'll give 100% of my money, whatever it is, and there's these idiotic vows that we make, and we make them more in our youth than we make them, when we get older, and most of the time we forget them, the euphoria of the moment makes us forget them unless we made it in front of other people or whatever it is, and it's just these foolish things that we say. And God always has grace for us. And even in the Bible, in Leviticus, it talks about when we make a foolish vow, whenever we do make a foolish vow, there is an escape from that foolish vow. God knows our abilities and knows our hearts. And so, according to this text right here, it says he made the vow which he had made. And she had no relations with a man. Thus it came a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went yearly to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah. So there's this ceremony every single year where all the daughters of this city, Gilead, they remember Jephthah's daughter. And they remember that she was sacrificed before she got married. The daughters of Jephthah, the Gileadite, 4 days of the year. And then the story continues on in chapter 12, verses 1 through 7. And we'll just read this part here. And this is the word on the back here. Can everybody read this word? What does this word say? Lollapalooza, right? Then the men of Ephraim were summoned, and they crossed to Zaphon and said to Jephthah, "Why did you cross over to fight against the sons of Ammon without calling us to go with you? We will burn your house down with you." Okay, so he's just come back from a battle. He's had to sacrifice his daughter, and now these other people from the tribe of Ephraim, which are the cousins of Manasseh, the brothers of Manasseh, the cousins and all that kind of stuff, and they say, "Why didn't you ask us to fight with you?" Okay, they're mad at him. Verse 2, and Jephthah said to them, I and my people were at great strife with the sons of Ammon when I called you. You did not deliver me from their hand, and when I saw that you would not deliver me, I took my life in my own hands and crossed over against the sons of Ammon, and the Lord gave them into my hand. Why then have you come up to me this day to fight against me? So there's civil war, basically, between the tribe of Manasseh and the tribe of Ephraim. Then Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead and fought Ephraim, and the men of Gilead defeated Ephraim because they said, "You are fugitives of Ephraim, O Gileadites, as the midst of Ephraim and in the midst of Manasseh." And the Gileadites captured the fords of the Jordan opposite Ephraim. And it happened when any of the fugitives of Ephraim said, "Let me cross over," the men of Gilead to spy on them, "Are you an Ephraimite?" He would say, "No." Then they would say to him, "Say Shibboleth." But he said Sibboleth, for he could not pronounce it correctly. And so you get this word Shibboleth, and this is an amazing word. We use it today. I mean, it's used in any spy manual. I mean, it's a biblical reference, first referenced here in the book of Judges, and normally you don't hear this word Shibboleth, and I ran into this word when I was living in the Philippines. I lived there for 2.5 years. It's not only just a pronunciation of a word that you would say wrong, but also like the cultural norms that you wouldn't normally understand if you lived in a foreign country. So in the Philippines, you know, if you want to count, you in America we go 1, 2, 3, right? We do that. But in the Philippines they go 1, 2, and then they do this. This is their number for 3. And so whenever you say, "I want 3 mangoes," you do something like, you do this. "I want 3 mangoes," you know. Or the beginning of their words never start with an S. So our youth leader, our kids director, her last name is what? Espiritu, right? Because they can't pronounce spirit. They can't say the word spirit. It has to be spirit. It always has to. My wife is Filipina, and she cannot pronounce an S at the beginning of a word. Why? Because it has to have an ES at the beginning of the word. Same thing with us, you know, in a lot of different pronunciations of other countries as well. Or you know someone from Canada, what do they say? How do they say the word out? Hey. Yeah, you would know that they're not from America by the way they pronounce something. In the Philippines also, during World War II, they would ask people that they thought were spies to say this word. Especially, you know, Japanese people that were infiltrating the military during World War II, and in the Philippines, and you know, Filipinos and Japanese, they are all Asian and all that kind of stuff. And they would ask them to say this word at checkpoints, Lollapalooza. And the Asian culture, the Japanese, they can't pronounce the L sound. And this has tons of L's in it. And so they can't say Lollapalooza. They would say Ra-Ra-Palooza or whatever, you know. They can't say that L sound. Why? Because it's not in their in any of their pronunciations, any of their, you know, any of their letters. You know, it's just not part of their culture. They didn't grow up with it. Or people, when during World War II, for the Germans, they would ask them about, you know, baseball or something like that, you know. Something that is cultural only to your country. And that is a shibboleth. And so these people of Ephraim, they couldn't say the sh sound. It's like a lot of kids can't tell the difference between ship and chip. You know, my sons growing up, they had the hardest time enunciating the difference between ship, which is the sh sound, and chip, which is the ch sound, right? Why? Because they're very close in the mouth, and that's just a cultural thing. That's just a pronunciation thing that you have to train yourself to do. And the people of Ephraim never, you know, had this sh sound, so they couldn't pronounce it. So they were saying Sibboleth instead of Shibboleth, and so of course you know that they're not from your native hometown. So what do they do when they cross the Jordan River? These people of Ephraim, they They're trying to infiltrate or come over from their nation and come into Manasseh. And they say, say the word Shibboleth and we'll let you in. And they say Sibboleth in verse 6, for they could not pronounce it correctly. Then they seized him and slew him at the fords of the Jordan. Thus there fell at that time 42,000 of Ephraim. This is a horrible civil war. This is brother against brother. Both of these tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim, are descendants of who? Joseph. Horrendous civil war. This isn't fighting against the enemies of Israel. This is infighting amongst themselves. This is the book of Judges and what's happening. And then verse 7, and Jephthah judged Israel 6 years. Then Jephthah the Gileadite died and was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. And so ends his life. And there's ups and there's downs. But what happened? God used him. God used him as a judge for this period of time to save the people of Israel from the nations that were around them. And next week we're going to find out more about more of the judges that happened and what's happening, and we're going to be coming up to the book or to the Judge Samson, who gets a major portion in the book of Judges as well. So that's where the name Shibboleth comes from, and very seldom do we have it, but yet it's a cultural reference that is taken from the Bible. This is the very first time a cultural word is used for cultural pronunciation, is used to determine whether people are from one culture or not. Okay? Amen? Dear Father, we thank you for your word, and we ask that you help us to desire to be more and more and more and more like you. We ask that you help us to focus upon you and to realize that you want us to use our words wisely. You want us to serve you. You want us to sacrifice to you. But most of all, you want our obedience and us to use our vows for you wisely. That you desire that we come to you with contrite hearts, with humility in our hearts, not full of pride, and that you desire that we seek your face and wisdom and to know what to do. You desire that we seek you for every single thing in our life. And so today we do that. We ask that you help us to have a desire for godliness in our lives, a desire for humility, a desire for service to you, a sacrifice of our own lives, Lord. The greatest sacrifice that we could ever give of anything that we have, more than our money, more than our possessions, our lives, a sacrifice to you, Father. And so we ask that you help us to reveal to us those things in our lives that need to be weeded out, and so that more of us can be given to you on a daily basis. Father, we truly do love you, and we ask you help us to examine our lives daily for you. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your guidance. Thank you for your word. In Jesus' name, amen.